everybody, Mike Beer here with your DRF race of the day for Friday, November 18th, brought to you by DRF. That's the race of the day. Race number 9 at Aqueduct. It's a New York bred entry-level allowance for filly and mare sprinters. They're going 6 furlongs on the main track. Here is your field of 9 right now. We'll take a look at them. Scan the QR code on your screen that you see right now to gain free access on your mobile devices. Pretty wide open entry-level allowance here for these New York bred filly sprinters. As you can see from the morning line, several of them sort of closely bunched here in price by morning line odds maker David Aragona. He made number 9 Carbon the 3-1 morning line favorite, but it's very close. Number 5 Norman Queen is 7-2. Rebo's Valentine the 7-4-1. Fancy Feline the 6-9-2. Can't Hurry Love the 4-5-1. Most of the money is going to be spread among those horses, and it's hard to say which one is going to be the favorite. Perhaps it will be Carbon, who's very lightly raced with upside, coming off of an underrated performance off of the layoff last time. Certainly there's a chance that the number 5 Norman Queen just winds up going favored here, if for no other reason, and she's also off of a layoff in this race. Hasn't run since way back at the beginning of March here at Aqueduct, but she also, that last time we saw her, earned an 89 by her speed figure, blowing out starter allowance rivals. So, that's the fastest figure in this field by several lengths. And so that's, sure to attract attention for a very lightly raced filly and one who has an awful lot of speed. We'll see if she brings that speed back here off the layoff for an interim trainer here, Faith Wilson, who is subbing for Jeffrey Englehart at this point. As far as the pace goes, let's see if that could possibly work against a horse like Norman Queen. I suppose that's a possibility. The Timeform US pace projector here with the red bar scenario, they're expecting a fast pace. Norman Queen is fast and will be up there. The number 4 Can't Hurry Love, she likes to be involved early in her races, and she should certainly be going. The number 3 Peak of Chic is shipping here off of back-to-back wins out of town at Parks, and both of those races were accomplished in wire-to-wire fashion. So I'm assuming that she's going from the inside draw. So yeah, there's really a chance that this pace gets fast, and I'm assuming the key to that whole thing is the number 5 Norman Queen, who again is off the layoff here, and so we'll see if she's just ready to fire one of her good races off the bench, because if she is, she's supposed to be really, really tough in this race. We'll start off the handicapping by taking a look at the horse down on the rail. Doc Rock just feels like one who's going to have to improve. She's a 3-year-old. She's second off the layoff here, a short layoff. When they brought her back at the end of October, it was a turf sprint. Kind of feels like maybe that was just a prep race for her. Her prior 2 dirt races were both wins up at Finger Lakes, and they were both wins from off the pace. So I suppose that's a positive for her. She's won 3 of her last 4 starts on the main track. The last 2, again, from off the pace at Finger Lakes. This is a way tougher race for her. She's facing some way better horses in this spot, but I guess she, you could just say she has the right running style for this race. She is still improving. It feels like the last 2 dirt races of her career are the 2 best that she's ever run. And she's going to be a price in this race. So I'm not going to, argue too hard against her. I didn't like her that much in this race. The number 2 is Liberty Flame. I think she's a contender. Liberty Flame is one of 3 fillies who ran in this condition when they ran this race on October 22nd here at Aqueduct. That race was going 6.5. Fancy Feline was in that race. She finished second. Liberty Flame wound up finishing third. Can't Hurry Love finished 5th as the 2-1 favorite in that race. Listen, among those horses, and I have no problem with the race that Liberty Flame ran. She was, they sort of center forward, and she wound up dueling with Can't Hurry Love for a while in that race. Just got a little tired at the end to settle for third. Personally, I thought Fancy Feline, of the horses exiting that race, I thought Fancy Feline ran the best race, and I kind of preferred her out of that October 22nd race. But Liberty Flame's very lightly raced still. She's really never run a poor race on the main track. I think she's a major player in this race for Pat Quick, and I feel like she's going to be a fair price once again in here. Pika Chic is that shipper coming in from Parks with speed, back-to-back wins against weaker horses. Did earn a career best 73 buyer in the most recent win, where she won a fast pace and just held on at the end. It was a very game performance to pull off an upset there at 15-1. That was also first off the claim for trainer Michael Moore, who does a really good job. This filly is coming in off the best race of her life. I suppose you could look at her and say, well, if you want to go back to March over a wet track there at Parks, she won a race from last to first. So, she did it without the lead that day. And so maybe that's something that you don't have to worry about too much, her being more of a speed type horse. Maybe she can do it without the early lead here if she doesn't make it. I still think they have their best chance to win here. Shipping is just send her and see what happens. She is a 6-time winner, and she's facing a bunch of horses who are basically eligible for a non-2 life allowance. So, there were things to like about this horse. Again, we'll see if she gets involved on the early pace this time and it's too much for her, because Can't Hurry Love, who's drawn right next door in post number 4, Can't Hurry Love is just a horse who, it feels like she's going to go in this race. All of her recent dirt starts since they brought her back from the layoff this year as a 3-year-old, they've just been sending her off to the lead. She did win first off the layoff at Saratoga. That was on a wet track. I thought she ran fine in that race. Her next start also over a wet track in this condition. I didn't love that performance, but it was a pretty competitive pace, I suppose. She was up there. She fought off some challengers and wound up holding on for second over a late running Carbon. And her next start, October 20. She was in that October 22nd race again. That was on a fast track. Listen, she was favored in that race. She contested the pace for a long way. She got very tired through the stretch. I didn't care for that performance, and I can't say that I, loved her prior dirt races anyway. Is she good enough to win this race? Yeah, I think she probably is. I'm just not that big a fan. I'd rather have other horses in here. Norman Queen is the 5. Listen, I don't really have any knocks on her. She's run on dirt 3 times. Her first career dirt start way back in January off the layoff against maiden special weight competition. This was off the claim for Jeffrey Englehart at a time when he was, really winning everything off the claim. She just absolutely blew a field out as the favorite with a 76 by hour speed figure. Came back in her next start in a starter race, sloppy sealed track, going 7 furlongs, ran another very good one, big speed in that race, got to the clear early lead, just couldn't quite hold on going 7, but she still ran well. And then, of course, the last time we saw her was the big, another big win with an 89 buyer right on the front end. You expect her to come back with fresh speed off the layoff here. She's probably going, and she just has the figures to suggest that even though her last 2 starts are in starter races and not this entry-level allowance condition, she just has the speed and the figures to suggest that she just might be better than these horses. I think she's super dangerous. We'll see what she does off the layoff. Fancy Feline, again, is the 6. She's the one that I would want out of that October 22nd race. She had several chances prior to that, but both of her prior wins, and she has won twice in her career, they both came last winter right here over this distance at Aqueduct from off the pace. Feels like she's going to have something to run at here. And in that most recent start, again, she's just a horse I would want out of that race, because she was, after winding up a little bit outpaced early in there and sort of towards the back of the field, she made an early move, and she was a good 4 or 5 wide all the way around the turn, chasing that pace, and she just refused to relent through this stretch. She wound up getting out finished by Funny How, and then prevailing for second. But I just thought she did a ton of work in that race with a pretty difficult trip. That was a good performance. I think she's a very interesting horse in here, especially if she gets overlooked a little bit in the wagering. Rebo's Valentine is next, very lightly raced. Only 1 win so far. That was way back in January on this track over this distance, though she ran well that day. I thought she put in a really good finish in that spot. So that was an interesting performance. And it also happens to be among her 4 career starts so far, the only one that was on a fast dirt track. All of her other 3 races are on sloppy sealed tracks. That includes her most recent start back at the beginning of October, where she was, sort of up with the pace, doing a little bit of chasing in there, wound up finishing behind Can't Hurry Love and Carbon, but she didn't give in that race. I'll give her a little bit of credit in that performance, because even though she just couldn't quite reach the leaders and didn't really have enough at the end of the race, she never quit in that race and just got out finished for 3rd in the late stages. I thought she ran fine, and getting back to a fast track here, that could be a key for her. She's very lightly raced still. This horse is far from impossible. We'll see what kind of price she is. Bunty Windermere is the 8. Coming off of a major upset sprinting on turf in her most recent start against $40,000 maiden claimers, 52-1 in that race, got right to the lead and then managed to hold on at the end. She's run on dirt before. She usually shows speed in her races. That's not going to help her here. She's never run a particularly compelling race on the main track. I thought this was too tough a spot for Bunty Windermere. The number 9 is Carbon, as we talked about before. She was off the layoff in her most recent start, and she just missed getting by Can't Hurry Love for second in that race. All in all, I thought that was a pretty good performance. Not only was she, making her first start since the end of March, but she just got knocked around between horses at the start of that race, wound up last, outrun early. Kendra Carmouche, who was riding again that day, just didn't rush her. He let her sit back. She sort of caught up to that field on her own around the turn, and then she just went in out to the stretch and really put in a pretty good finish, I thought. Gaining ground all the way. Very useful performance, I thought, off of the long layoff. Her prior start before the layoff, which was her 3-year-old debut back in March here at Aqueduct. Good performance, clean, really clean trip from off the pace, but she always traveled in there as well, and I really liked the way she overran that field in the stretch to win it clear. That was a good performance too. A lot of upside with this horse again. We'll see what kind of price she is. As the morning line favorite, I suppose you could argue that maybe you would rather take someone else just because it feels like a pretty well-matched field, and we'll see how the betting all does shake out here, because as we put the picks up there now, I did take Carbon on top in this race. I liked her maiden win, and I liked her return from the layoff last time. I thought that was a very useful performance on a sloppy track with plenty of excuses too. A race where she didn't really have to run, but she did. I'm afraid of the returning Norman Queen in this race just because she's so fast and has the really fast figure there. But off the layoff, it feels like she's going to get bet anyway. I'll take a little shot against her here with Carbon. I went 9, 5, and 6. Put Fancy Feline third. I thought she ran an underrated race in her most recent performance too. This is a good race though. Your race of the day for Friday is the 9th at Aqueduct, entry-level allowance for New York bred filly sprinters. This is a good race. I think several different options here. The approximate post time is 3:43 Eastern time. Good luck.